All right, on today's video, I'm giving you my top 50 Devy football player rankings and tiers. 8 tiers, 50 players. College football season started last weekend. We only got 2 games, USC, Notre Dame. But this weekend, we are diving headfirst into a full slate of games. So it's important to say that these rankings are fluid. They will change. But here's how they currently stand, my top 50 Superflex Devy rankings. The first tier, we don't need to spend that much time on. Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Drake May. For these 2 quarterbacks, the film is fantastic. The size is there. We don't have to ask any questions like we did with Bryce Young. What will they do in the NFL with this kind of size? For Marvin Harrison Jr., great pedigree. You know what his dad did in the NFL, and we know what he did last year at Ohio State. All these guys should be a lock to go top 5 in the NFL draft if things go the way that we believe that they should. All right, on to the second tier here. And this is where my first running back will come off the board. Now, who is the RB1 in Devy football? There's a lot of different options. Some might say Nicholas Singleton, like myself. Some might say Raheem Mostert. Some might say Travion Henderson. There's another name that other people might say, which is Quinshon Judkins. A lot of people will either have one of these 4 names as their RB1 in Devy football rankings. For me, it's Nicholas Singleton. I love the way he plays the game, and I am very confident on how it will translate to the next level. When I watch him, he reminds me a little bit of Nick Chubb in the open field. Those long, lengthy strides to get to his top end speed. Pretty good after contact, pretty good through contact. You can make the case for Raheem Sanders. When I watch him, I see a little bit of Zeke Elliott. He's a little bit better in the air at this point than I would say Nicholas Singleton is, excuse me. And I mean, he was incredible last year. The highest yards per attempt for any running back who had over 200 attempts in the SEC, faced the best defenses every week. I mean, he balled out. Raheem Sanders and KJ Jefferson should be a dynamic duo again this year. Travion Henderson had the incredible freshman year, then had the injury where he broke a bone in his foot for his sophomore season, took a big step back in efficiency and production. He is healthy. He's ready to prove himself. And then Quinshon Judkins, the 3-star recruit that Lane Kiffin found out of nowhere and turned him into a star as a freshman with Zach Evans there. I don't think anyone can honestly say that before the year they anticipated Quinshon Judkins being that good, except for maybe Lane Kiffin, who is the GOAT recruiter in my opinion. But whoever you want to be RB1, you can make a case for it with these guys. For me, it's Nicholas Singleton. I really love the way that he can translate to the next level, and he is a 2025 eligible player, so he won't be eligible in this year's NFL draft. But sandwiched in between these guys, I will put Emeka Egbuka right between Sanders and Travion Henderson. I'm a big fan of Emeka Egbuka. When I watch his game, I see a little bit of young Juju Smith-Schuster. Think about this before, before he was easy to hate on, before he was the TikTok guy. Those first couple years, he was electric to pair along with Antonio Brown. I see also a little bit of Chris Godwin in his prime years, a little bit of Michael Crabtree. This is a player that is very exciting to watch, knows how to get open in space, and if an Ohio State receiver is producing at Ohio State, typically that's a good sign that they're going to produce in the NFL. We have seen that historically. But in between Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins is where I would have Brock Bowers. Now, listen, if you're in a tight end premium league, I'm probably going to take Brock Bowers a little bit higher than this. I mean, you can make an argument that Brock Bowers goes all the way at the top of this tier. Excuse me. This is probably the best tight end prospect we have seen since Kyle Pitts. Now, will he get higher draft capital than Kyle Pitts? Probably not. I mean, that was pretty high, but I think he's a lock to be a top 10 pick, and that is going to bode really well for his Dynasty football outlook. But a very good athlete, very good pass catcher, led the college football in a lot of important analytic categories, was great after the catch, great contested catcher, converted a lot of first downs. This dude is going to produce big numbers on Sundays. In a non-tight end premium, I'm sneaking him right in between Travion and Quinshon. But in a tight end premium, like I mentioned, you could probably put him even higher if you want. And the last player I will put in this tier 2 is a wide receiver that once you watch him, it's impossible not to fall in love with this guy. I remember over on the Dynasty Land channel, when I first scouted George Pickens, I said, some people are just born to play the wide receiver position. Pablo Picasso was born to paint. George Pickens was born to play wide receiver. I just fell in love with watching him play the position. Now, completely different type of player, but I think the same can be said with Evan Stewart. He is a track star out of high school, similar body and play style to Devonta Smith. Now, he's just as good as Devonta Smith is at the catch point, but I would argue after the catch, he might be even more explosive than Devonta Smith is. A very special player, and I'm very excited to see him as a freshman led his team in receiving yards and in receptions, and he's got a new quarterback, which we'll talk about in a minute here. I'm very, very excited for Evan Stewart. I have no doubt that he's going to be a star at the next level, my wide receiver 3 in my Devy rankings. Now, to start the third tier, we'll talk about a player who last year was not given the respect that he's deserved, and now I think he's finally getting that respect. That is Malik Nabers, wide receiver out of LSU. It was all Kayshon Boutte last year, and Malik Nabers, absolutely balled out. He should be a candidate along with the likes of Marvin Harrison Jr. for the Blitnikoff Award. I'm not saying he's going to win it, but he should put up that kind of production his second year in the system with the same exact quarterback and the same exact head coach. Then the rest of this tier, let's kind of break it out here. So right after Malik, we've got Luther Burden, who I have labeled the most exciting player to watch in college football. The athleticism is every play. Every time he touches it, you can see the burst, the explosiveness in the open field, a little bit of Amari Cooper, a little bit of Jamar Chase athleticism. Very exciting player to watch. And former 5-star recruit. Same with Evan Stewart. Both of these guys were ranked number 1 and number 2 in their high school recruiting class. But right after Luther Burden, we'll have a little run of players here. Trey Benson, which is a name that I have been higher on than almost anyone in the Devy community this entire offseason. He's my RB5. I guess I'm calling my shot. I think he's going to be a very good NFL player. And last year, split the backfield 3 ways. He led the backfield with 154 attempts. A couple other guys got about 90 attempts as well. But his missed tackle force percentage was ridiculous. He forced a missed tackle on over 41%. 41% of his opportunities, which is ridiculous. It's like 11% higher than what Bijan Robinson did last year, and he was an absolute master at it. And the last 2 names are some younger players in this tier. Drew Allar, which he is a very exciting sophomore at Penn State. Huge body. I mean, this dude is like 6'5", 240. Absolutely a threat on the goal line. You're going to hear the Josh Allen comps, and it's kind of understandable because when you watch this guy, it's like, how do you not give him the ball every time on the goal line? He's bigger than the running backs that are on your own roster. But a very exciting player. I'm very excited to watch him myself. Hopefully we get to see a breakout from him, my quarterback 3 in Devy right now. And to finish the tier 3, I might have to move him up higher. I mean, this dude looked absolutely electric in his debut for the USC Trojans, Zachariah Branch. I mean, if he keeps playing that way, if he leads this team as a freshman, there's a chance he's right by Evan Stewart, if not ahead of Evan Stewart. Like, he could be the wide receiver 3 in Devy, wide receiver 2 in Devy, maybe right behind Marvin Harrison Jr. before we even blink our eyes. But I'm really excited about that tier 3. These are all players that I want as much stock of as possible. And for the most part, all very highly touted recruits as well. So getting into tier 4, it's going to get a little bit deeper now. We'll talk about Donovan Edwards, the running back out of Michigan. I do prefer him over Blake Corum. I like the way his game translates to the next level. Reminds me a little bit of Alvin Kamara. I mean, some of the reasons that people fell in love with Jahmyr Gibbs, now Edwards doesn't have the same speed, but some of the reasons people fell in love with Jahmyr Gibbs are some of the reasons that they'll fall in love with Donovan Edwards. He is that true like dual threat, can do it on the ground, but also is a fantastic pass catcher, which is kind of what the NFL is leaning towards. I think the Jahmyr Gibbs top 12 pick in the NFL draft is very good news for a player like Donovan Edwards, who should have a great year with Michigan. Michigan probably has the best backfield in the nation. Right behind him, Will Shipley, who all he does is put up numbers, put up huge numbers, not only on the ground, but through the air as well, dual threat guy. And now they've gotten rid of DJ Ungalele. They've brought in Cade Klubnik, which we'll talk about next. Cade Klubnik, 5-star recruit out of his high school class. Clemson is hoping that he will be the next Trevor Lawrence, if you will. It's a good program, good coaching, and he's a recruit that's highly talked about. So he should have a chance to also put himself on the map. Now, is it too early? I don't know, but talk about a kid who is a prodigy, who grew up around the best names at the quarterback position in football, right? In all your Devy drafts, people are going to be asking, when is it too early to draft this guy? I believe he's the highest graded quarterback recruit ever. He is attending the University of Michigan. That is Arch Manning. This is where I'm comfortable taking him. This is where I think he could go off the board, right here in this tier 4. Yes, there's a chance that he's a flop. There's also a chance that he's a generational prospect. I mean, most people couldn't even pay for the type of coaching and upbringing that he's had throughout his entire life. To finish the tier, we've got Rome Odunze, who is not a young player coming out. He'll be a senior when he declares. Currently my wide receiver 7, but man, when you talk about wide receivers who can just separate with ease, Rome Odunze comes to mind. He, along with Malik Neighbors, along with Marvin Harrison Jr., should put up huge numbers this year. And he's got his quarterback back in Michael Penix Jr. Neither of them decided to go to the NFL draft, which I think maybe Rome should have. We'll find out. Next, Braylon Allen. This dude is huge. He's an absolute monster. He's a unit. He is similar to Derrick Henry in the way that he plays the game. He just doesn't have the long run speed that Derrick Henry has. He has the body. He originally was recruited as a safety and a linebacker because he's so massive. As a freshman, he put up ridiculous numbers at Wisconsin. Like, there was a span in 2 games where he had like 400 rushing yards and 6 touchdowns as a freshman, 17 years old. So the dude broke out early. He looks incredible. We'll see. For me, Braylon Allen's NFL draft status will come down to how he tests at the combine, really, because that's the only question is what's the long run speed with this guy. After Braylon Allen, a couple names to finish: Xavier Worthy and Antonio Williams. Now, I've talked about Antonio Williams a lot on this channel. Big fan of his. He reminds me a little bit of Amon-Ra St. Brown. Was primarily a slot player last year. He'll play a little bit more outside. And as far as Xavier Worthy go, I am fully aware that a lot of people will have him much higher than I do. Currently my wide receiver 8, and I don't even feel super comfortable with him being my wide receiver 8. Like, I'll be honest, he's just not a player that I'm going to have very much stock of in my Devy leagues. A little bit undersized. I think he's 160 pounds if I'm not mistaken. He can build into that body, but then you lose some of that, athleticism and that exciting play of his. And had some issues with his hands last year, but there was some injuries, so we have to give him a little bit of grace. I know he's a great athlete. I just am unsure of how many roles he can play in the NFL. Will he be limited to a slot player? I'm not sure. And I know I'm in the minority there. Okay, here into tier number 5. We're going to be talking about 50 players, guys. So I'm going to try and get through it as quickly as I possibly can, just so this video doesn't end up being an hour long. So let's get into tier number 5 here. We're going to list them off. Connor Wayman, who will be the starter for Texas A&M as a sophomore, former 5-star recruit. CJ Baxter, the #1 running back recruit in the most recent class, looked great in the high school All-American game. Right after him, we have Dante Moore, who I thought all indications were leading us to him starting as a true freshman. Now, it sounds like USC is going to play 3 quarterbacks this year. Why? I don't know. They say if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have none. So if you have 3, I mean, what does that mean? We'll find out, because I don't know what that means. But right after Dante Moore, I have a couple other quarterbacks: Malachi Nelson, Nicholas. I don't want to say this incorrectly. I believe it's Nicholas Iamaleava. I think I'm saying that wrong, but that dude is very exciting to watch. The good thing about Dante, Connor, Malachi, and Nicholas is that they all have pretty good size for the NFL. Nicholas, out of high school, had a couple comps to Justin Jefferson. I prefer Malachi Nelson because he is going to be the one connected to Lincoln Riley. We know Lincoln Riley has this huge history of getting his quarterbacks into the NFL and drafted high. So right now we anticipate Caleb Williams going, if he's going to be the first pick in the NFL draft, going into the NFL next year, meaning Malachi Nelson steps into an incredible program with incredible coaching, great pedigree. He could be the next big thing that we're talking about. But Dante Moore reminds me a little bit of CJ Stroud, very accurate guy, high IQ player, great leader. And then to finish off this tier, a young wide receiver out of Ohio State, Carnell Tate. Very excited about him. I know Ohio State was very excited to get him. At the end of the day, some sites have him 5-star, some sites have him 4-star. At the end of the day, when you get a recruit this high and they go to Ohio State as a receiver, yeah, I'll take a shot on them in my Devy drafts, because that is just a factory for wide receivers in the NFL. And to finish off the list, Tatoria McMillan, out of Arizona. I've heard a lot of people compare him to Drake London, and I kind of get it. Like, they kind of play the game a little bit similarly, huge bodies and can dominate out there. And then lastly, Troy Franklin, who's an exciting player, Bo Nix's favorite target last year. The only thing that concerns me is, like, he's a little bit too lanky. And I know that sounds weird, but he's 6'2", 190. It's just a strange size. But I'm probably overthinking it. He can get to 200 pretty easily, but he's an exciting player, more specifically after the catch. How big he is, I did not expect him to be that explosive after the catch. It's a little bit surprising. Okay, how are we doing for time? Because I don't want to go too crazy. Got to get to 50 players here. Okay, here in tier 6, I'm working on a database with my friend Kyle, and he's obsessed with this player. That is Baryon Brown. Baryon Brown out of Kentucky, led his team with Will Levis, led his team in receiving yards as a true freshman. That's very impressive. We like to see players who break out early. Now, the question is, what about the size? Because I believe he's 6'1", but he's 6'1", like 166 right now or something like that. I think he can kind of build into that frame. The good news is the likes of players like Devonta Smith is really opening up, I guess, stereotypes for athletes like this, like Baryon Brown. So to me, Baryon, like, when I look at Xavier Worthy, I'm like, okay, that's cool, but I could just get Baryon Brown later, you know? Exciting player, good height, but doesn't have the weight or the big body that you want in the NFL, but exciting player after the catch, you know, great athlete. That's how I view him. Okay, and then we got a couple running backs here. First one would be Justice Haynes out of Alabama. This was someone in the 2023 high school class, meaning they're eligible for the 2026 NFL draft. But similar to getting a wide receiver like Carnell Tate out of Ohio State, try and bet on programs that pump out really good running backs. Alabama. We know they have such a vast history of producing first, second, third round talents in the NFL draft. Justice Haynes, 4-star recruit. Some comps to Will Shipley, which we talked about a little bit earlier. I'm a big fan of his game. And as much as I like Jace McClellan, who is currently the starter there, there's a chance that we could see Justin Haynes a little bit more than people expect. Then we have Katron Allen, who he's in a tough position because he's not as good as Nicholas Singleton. You see that he's not efficient with his touches. He's not the exciting player to watch, but to a lesser extent, it's like how we valued, Rashawn Johnson when Bijan Robinson came out, right? I'm not saying Nicholas Singleton's going to be Bijan Robinson. I'm not even saying Katron's going to be as good as Rashawn. I think he's better personally. But you know, there's a chance that if everyone is watching Nicholas's film in the NFL draft, they're also going to be watching Katron, and I think they'll find some things that they like. Okay, the next player is a player that I have much lower than everyone else. That's Quinn Ewers. You know, I have seen Quinn Ewers. Like, I've been in Devy drafts this offseason, guys, where Quinn Ewers is like the 4th player off the board. Genuinely. It's been Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison Jr., Drake May, Quinn Ewers. I've seen that in a lot of different drafts. I'm just not in on Quinn Ewers. I'm not. I don't really like the way that he plays. He doesn't excite me. I know he's a former 5-star recruit transferred out of Ohio State. But I'm sorry. I don't like how Quinn Ewers operates, and I don't think that the hype is valid. So hate me if you want in the comments. Maybe I'll miss on Quinn Ewers, and I can feel free to adjust my rankings if I need to later on, but this is where I would currently have Quinn. And then to finish off this tier, his teammate Jatavion Sanders, who was the #1 athlete in the country when he signed with Texas, put up some impressive numbers for a tight end in college. Like, tight ends in college, typically when they're scouted, it's more based off of their athletic profile rather than the stats that they put up. Think about it. Luke Musgrave was a 2nd-round pick. He had like 12 receptions the year before he was drafted because of an injury. But I mean, go look at George Kittle's college stats. Like, typically people are much more focused on athletic traits than they are stats. The good thing is Jatavion Sanders is a freak athlete, and he has put up some pretty impressive numbers. So he could be, I could easily see him going 2nd round in the NFL draft, if not higher. Big fan of his. Again, if you're in a tight end premium, pop him up into tier 5, around the Cardinal Tate area. And the last player I'd have in this tier would be Ruben Owens, 5-star recruit who just landed with Texas A&M. We had Devon Achane, who just moved on. Now we have Ruben Owens. I'm not going to say he's going to start straight away, but he's from Texas, comes to Texas A&M, 5-star recruit, born and bred into football. Some comps out of high school to Rashad Penny. I think he's an even better pass catcher than Rashad Penny is, and I'm excited to watch him this year with the limited action that he'll probably see. He's probably not going to be like a full-time starter. Okay, we only have, I think, about 5 or 6 minutes left if I'm doing my math right. So let's get through this last bit quickly. Trevor Etienne, the brother of Travis, Matthew Golden, who thank God for Tank Dell, because Tank Dell is going to help Matthew Golden get on the NFL map. Matthew Golden put up big numbers as a freshman. Excited for him as a sophomore. We've got the quarterback out of Oklahoma, Jackson Arnold. We got Jalen McMillan, who he and Roma Dunze probably combined to have maybe a top 5 wide receiver room in all of college football this year. So Michael Penix Jr. is going to have a lot of weapons. Right after him, I will put Jaden Greathouse, who had a great start to his career. That opening game, along with Sam Hartman, his quarterback who transferred out of Wake Forest. I think he's going to put up big numbers as a freshman. He only played 8 snaps. He played 8 snaps and he had 2 touchdowns. Ridiculous. He should be a fantastic player. A big fan of his game. Then how about Antoine Juice Wells? Transferred from James Madison last year. Played his first year in SEC action. He was one of the favorite targets there at South Carolina. Big, huge body. It's hard not to see a guy in a South Carolina uniform and not, compare him to Deebo Samuel. I don't want to go overboard, but you can see some shades there. Exciting player. The issue with Wells is that he did transfer from community college. And is James Madison community? He transferred from a lower division of football, okay? And he's going to be a late declare. I was obsessed with Xavier Hutchinson last year. Different play styles, but his pedigree really hurt him in the NFL draft. So we have to be careful. I do love the way he plays the game, though. Huge, big body, great after the catch, really explosive. But yeah. Okay, so in tier number 8, the running back out of Kansas, Devin Neal. This is where I would have Blake Corum, who a lot of people are going to tell me I'm too low on him. Similar to Quinn Ewers, there's so much room to make your rankings fluid, right? We can change our opinions as we go throughout the college football season. For me, Blake Corum, already going to be an older running back entering the NFL, pushed back that timeline even further. And I think there's a chance that there's, in my mind, there's no scenario in which he outperforms what he did last year, which means there's no scenario in which he's going to be drafted higher this year than what he was last year. He's going to be a year older. He's going to have more carries on his body. He's going to have less impressive numbers this year. So I think he should have already declared, and I'm much more excited about Donovan Edwards. We got a couple quarterbacks here, J.J. McCarthy, the kid out of Michigan, and then a guy that I keep calling my shot on, K.J. Jefferson. Super efficient, not the most impressive raw passing abilities, but accurate, and I would say doesn't turn over the ball very much. Like, he's a very high IQ player, low turnover worthy play percentage. And the good thing about KJ Jefferson is he's a dual threat guy. You know, he has years where he has 800 rushing yards and like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 rushing touchdowns. To me, when I view Jalen Hurts, I think, who could be the next Jalen Hurts? A player that isn't going to go in the first round, but is an incredible leader, great locker room guy, always putting the work in, and is a dual threat. I view KJ Jefferson as like my shot on that being maybe him. And then to finish the tier, we have Malik Benson, a couple guys who are just coming in, Jonte Cooks, you know, there's a couple freshmen who are highly touted recruits. And then to finish off the list, a lot of people are not talking about this player, and I want to be the person to talk about him, Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter played cornerback at Jackson State, HBCU. Now he follows Sanders over to Colorado. Shedeur Sanders is going to be his starting quarterback, and there's reports that he will be a two-way player, meaning he'll play cornerback and wide receiver. He's extremely talented, ridiculous athlete, and I think there's a chance that he's a real Heisman dark horse. If he actually goes out there and he dominates in coverage and dominates as a wide receiver, there's a chance this guy is ranked much higher than we realize. So don't have much time left. Try to keep it under 30 minutes, but do me a favor, drop a like on the video, subscribe if you like this content, and let me know what you think in the comments below. I'll see you guys soon.